Ever feel like you should be reading more? Or maybe, you're watching someone, maybe a kid, struggle to really get lost in a book.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wonder, what actually flips that switch? What makes someone want to read?
Yeah.
And maybe even more importantly, does that desire actually translate into understanding, getting more out of it?
That's the core question, isn't it? It's such a crucial area. Reading is just so fundamental.
Right. Not just for school, but life.
Exactly. And
Like,
that spark, that motivation, or sometimes the lack of it, feels like a really key piece of the puzzle.
definitely. So for this deep dive, we've got our hands on some really interesting research. It's a meta-analysis
Okay.
published in the Educational Psychology Review. And this isn't just one study. It's like the ultimate bird's eye view.
Pulling lots of studies together.
Yeah, it combines findings from 39 different studies,
Mm.
all looking at ways to boost reading motivation, specifically in schools.
And these were theory-driven interventions, right?
Exactly. That's a key point. These weren't just random ideas people threw out there. They were based on solid theories about, how motivation works, how people learn.
Which makes the findings much more robust, potentially. It's not just what worked once, but what should work based on theory, and did it.
Precisely. So our mission for you listening today is basically to unpack all this. We want to get straight to the good stuff.
Mm.
What really makes a difference in getting reading motivation going?
And does it actually help with comprehension?
Yes. Does it lead to better understanding? Think of this as your fast track to being really informed on this.
Okay, let's dive in.
All right. So what were the big picture findings? When they looked across all these studies, what was the overall impact of these interventions?
Well, they looked at different categories of motivation, and one of the first interesting things is that interventions had a positive effect on what they called affirming motivations.
Affirming motivations.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
sounds like the
so
good stuff, right? Like reading because you actually enjoy it or you feel
yeah.
confident doing it.
Exactly that. Intrinsic motivation, self-efficacy, that sort of thing. The internal drivers, and yeah, there was a positive impact. The effect size was D equals 0.38.
Okay, 0.38. So a measurable positive effect. Makes sense. Boosts the enjoyment and confidence. Motivation goes up.
Right. But here's where it gets maybe a bit surprising. They also found a positive effect for extrinsic motivations.
Extrinsic. So
Mhm.
like reading for rewards, good grades, pizza parties.
Basically, yes, reading for some external outcome. And that also showed a positive effect, actually slightly larger, D equals 0.42.
Huh. 0.42.
Uh,
That does raise an eyebrow a bit. We often hear that extrinsic rewards can undermine intrinsic motivation.
It's a common concern, definitely. But what this research suggests is, well, maybe those external rewards can act as an initial hook.
Like a way to get kids in the door, so to speak.
Perhaps. They might draw students in, create an initial positive association, or just get them to engage enough to discover some intrinsic enjoyment later on. It's not necessarily the end goal, but maybe a starting point.
That's a really interesting nuance. It's not so black and white then. Okay, what about combined motivations? Did they look at interventions targeting a mix?
They did. Some interventions tried to hit multiple angles, maybe boosting enjoyment and talking about future benefits. Those showed a smaller positive effect. It was D equals 0.17.
Only 0.17. So focusing seems potentially more effective than trying to do everything at once.
That's one way to interpret it, yeah. Either focusing on the internal affirming side or even strategically using the extrinsic side seem to yield stronger results in this analysis than the mixed approach.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And the million-dollar question. Did boosting motivation in whatever form actually help kids understand what they were reading? Comprehension.
Yes, absolutely. That's a key finding. There was a clear positive effect on reading comprehension, too. The effect size there was D equals 0.27.
Okay, 0.27. So it connects. More motivation does seem to lead to better understanding. That's great news.
It really is. It shows it's not just about feeling better about reading. It can actually improve the skill itself.
Now, you mentioned different types of motivation. Was there anything these interventions didn't seem to affect much?
Right. They also measured undermining motivations. These are the things we want to see less of.
Like avoiding reading,
Right.
feeling anxious about it.
Exactly. Avoiding schools, anxiety. And interestingly, the interventions across the board didn't have a significant impact here. The effect size was basically 0. D equals now 0.01, non-significant.
Wow, that is interesting. You'd think boosting the positives would naturally chip away at the negatives. Why might those be so, well, stubborn?
That's a great question. The researchers suggest these negative feelings, these avoidance patterns, can become quite deeply ingrained.
Built up over time.
Yeah, often from years of struggle or negative experiences with reading. It might take more than just a general motivation boost. Maybe it requires more targeted, perhaps longer-term strategies to really tackle those underlying anxieties or skill deficits that fuel the avoidance.
Like overcoming a phobia, almost. Needs a specific approach.
Something like that. It suggests that while we can encourage the positive side, counteracting deep-seated negative associations might be a different kind of challenge.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. You mentioned these interventions were based on theories. What kind of theories were we talking about?
Well, they drew from quite a range of established psychological theories of motivation, things like self-determination theory.
Right. Autonomy, competence, relatedness.
Exactly. And expectancy value theory, do I think I can do it, and is it worthwhile?
Right.
Social cognitive theory, which really emphasizes self-belief, self-efficacy. Interest theory, pretty self-explanatory. How engaging is it?
Mhm.
Achievement goal theory, what are students trying to achieve, mastery or just performance? And attribution theory, how do kids explain their successes and failures?
Wow. Okay, so a solid theoretical grounding.
And they also mentioned the reading engagement model, which kind of integrates several of these specifically for reading.
So lots of potential angles. But was there a particular theoretical approach that seemed to be, the most effective, the real key?
This is probably one of the biggest takeaways from the whole analysis. Interventions that were specifically designed to trigger interest had the most positive effects.
Trigger interest.
Yes, sparking that curiosity, that engagement. These interventions showed the strongest positive impact, not just on those affirming motivations we talked about, the enjoyment, the confidence.
But also on comprehension.
Yes. Also on reading comprehension itself. That seemed to be a really potent combination.
That's huge. So forget just rewards or just telling kids reading is good for them. The key is making it genuinely interesting to them.
That appears to be a very powerful lever based on this analysis.
How did they actually do that in these studies? Can we get some concrete examples of triggering interest?
Sure. The paper's appendix gives some good examples. One common strategy was linking reading choices directly to students' expressed interests.
So finding out what a kid is into space, dinosaurs, whatever, and giving them books about that.
Exactly. Recommending specific books based on their passions. Another approach involved more hands-on activities connected to the text.
Like what?
Well, if they were reading about, say, volcanoes, the intervention might involve actually building a model volcano, making the topic more tangible, more active, more engaging than just reading words on a page.
I love that. It makes reading feel less like a chore and more like an exploration. Makes total sense that would boost motivation and comprehension. Okay, so triggering interest is key. What other factors influenced how well these things worked? Like, did it matter how long they lasted?
Yes, duration was definitely a factor. The analysis found that longer interventions generally had a greater positive impact on those affirming motivations, the intrinsic interest and self-efficacy.
Right, so building that internal drive isn't usually a quick fix. It takes time.
It suggests that sustained effort, repeated positive experiences probably matter quite a bit. You can't just do one fun activity and expect a lasting change.
Makes perfect sense. What about who ran the intervention? Did researchers get different results than, say, teachers?
They did find a difference there, specifically regarding comprehension. Interventions delivered by the researchers themselves showed a larger positive effect on reading comprehension compared to those delivered by others who were mostly teachers in these studies.
Why would that be? Are researchers just better at it?
Well, it could be a few things. Researchers might have, a deeper understanding of the specific intervention's nuances. They may also stick more closely to the plan, what's called implementation fidelity.
Making sure it's done exactly as designed.
Right. Teachers, understandably, have a million other things demanding their attention and might adapt things on the fly. It doesn't mean teachers can't be effective, of course, but it does highlight the importance of perhaps good training and ongoing support if these programs are rolled out more widely.
That's a really practical point for schools thinking about adopting these kinds of approaches. Okay, what about the students? Did it work better for certain kids, like younger versus older?
Yes, student characteristics mattered. For reading comprehension improvement, the interventions were generally more effective for primary school students compared to secondary students.
Younger kids saw bigger comprehension gains. Why might that be?
It could be that younger students are still in a more foundational stage of reading development, so boosting motivation has a more direct payoff in skill growth. Plus, the texts and tasks get much more complex in secondary school, so maybe motivation alone isn't enough to overcome those higher level comprehension challenges without other supports.
Okay, that tracks. What about students who are already struggling readers versus those who are doing okay?
Another important distinction, the meta-analysis found that interventions produced larger gains in reading comprehension for typical readers compared to struggling readers.
Ah, so struggling readers did still benefit in terms of motivation.
Yes, their motivation often improved, but the impact on their actual comprehension wasn't as pronounced as it was for typical readers.
Which suggests, again, that motivation is crucial. But for students really struggling with the mechanics or strategies of reading, they likely need that direct skill instruction too.
Precisely. Motivation might open the door, but they still need the tools to walk through it.
Got it. And there was an interesting finding about gender too, right?
Yes, this was quite noteworthy. Interventions seem to have a greater positive effect on those affirming internal motivations when there was a higher proportion of boys in the group.
Really. Given that we often hear boys report lower reading motivation on average.
Exactly. It suggests that these kinds of interest-based, engaging interventions might be particularly effective for reaching and motivating boys, who sometimes are a harder group to engage in reading.
That's actually really encouraging news, a potential tool to help close that gap. Okay, one more big practical question. Do you need to teach reading skills alongside these motivation boosters, or is focusing on motivation enough?
The meta-analysis specifically looked at that. They compared interventions that were purely motivational against those that combine motivation with explicit skills instruction.
Yeah.
And they found no significant difference in the overall effects on motivation or comprehension based on whether skills instruction was included within these specific interventions.
Wow. So focusing just on the motivation side can still yield benefits for both motivation and comprehension.
That's what this analysis suggests. It implies there's unique value in dedicating effort specifically to fostering that desire and interest, that why of reading, independent of the how.
That's a powerful point.
Okay.
Okay, and quickly, did the type of text matter? Like stories versus informational texts?
Apparently not significantly. The genre of text used, narrative, informational, didn't seem to change the effectiveness of the motivational strategies much.
Good to know. So the strategies are potentially quite flexible. Okay, let's just quickly revisit the types of motivation. Affirming, extrinsic, undermining. We touched on the surprise that extrinsic showed positive effects. Any more on that?
Just that the researchers noted some prior work suggesting intrinsically motivated students also sometimes report higher extrinsic motivation. It's not necessarily that one causes the other in these interventions, but they might be linked. Maybe sparking internal interest also makes students see the external value more clearly. It's complex.
Right, not as simple either. And finally, did it matter how motivation was measured? Self-reports versus teacher ratings.
There was a hint of a difference. Teacher reports seem to show the largest effects on affirming motivations.
Teachers saw bigger changes.
Potentially. But the researchers added a caution. This finding was based on fewer studies using teacher reports. So it needs a bit of an asterisk. Maybe teachers see engagement over time differently than a student's self-reports in a snapshot. It's hard to say for sure.
Okay, noted. So let's try and wrap this all up. For everyone listening, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the big message is positive. Yes, we can actively foster reading motivation, and it does seem to help with comprehension too.
That's number one. It works.
Right. And a key strategy, maybe the key strategy, seems to be genuinely sparking interest. Tapping into what individual students find engaging.
Make it relevant. Make it exciting.
Exactly. Also, remember that duration matters, sustained effort seems better. And these approaches might be particularly helpful for engaging boys.
Good points.
And while motivation helps everyone, remember that struggling readers likely need that targeted skill support alongside the motivational boost, especially to see big comprehension gains.
Fantastic summary. Really clear. So for you listening, the challenge is to think. How can you use this? If you're a student, how can you find reads that truly spark your interest?
If you're a parent or educator, how can you create those opportunities? How can you make reading feel less like an assignment and more like an adventure?
Definitely food for thought. And that finding about the undermining motivations being hard to shift, it leaves us with a final provocative thought, doesn't it?
It does. If these kinds of interventions don't easily budge those deep-seated negative feelings or anxieties about reading, what does?
Right. What are the longer-term, maybe more intensive strategies needed to really help someone overcome years of negative reading experiences?
It's a big question, probably beyond the scope of these specific studies, but crucial for helping all readers thrive. What kind of consistent, supportive environment is needed to rewrite those negative narratives?
Something important to keep thinking about. It feels like there's always more to learn. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts or experiences on this too. Feel free to share.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing conversation.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.